Hey, what's up, man?
Oh, what up?
How you doing?
How's it going? I'm doing all right. No complaints over here. Just had a good session this morning.
Yeah,
Madison, so
you guys back training now?
yeah, just it's small group-sided stuff. So it's like 4 to a field, a lot of kind of functional and technical stuff. But it's better. It's better than on Zoom, you know.
Absolutely. When are you guys getting back to more full team training?
It's still kind of up in the air. I know the league is still figuring a few things out with when the start date is and kind of the full moratorium and things like that. Am I good if I go sideways, or does that kind of mess up the shot?
Yeah, then it has you sideways in it, so
okay.
You can't go straight up and down.
I'll keep it up like this.
All right, so just to get started, welcome back, guys, to Footy and Coffee Conversations. Just introduce yourself. Say what club you're playing for currently and what position you are.
Yeah, I'm Louis Bennett. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I'm playing for Forward Madison at the moment, and I am a center mid or left mid / outside back, depending on who sees me and who likes me.
Yeah, and you're one of, I think, 3 guys that are from Wisconsin originally, rocking for Forward Madison. So that's cool, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that was a big thing for me. It's a little extra sense of pride, especially being in the home state and especially playing with guys. I think JC kind of feels the same way. Carl as well. Just kind of first time that Wisconsin's had a professional soccer. So.
Yeah, I'm sure kind of surreal to you after growing up in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, and then now having a professional team that you can play for. I mean, growing up, that wasn't even a dream of yours at that time.
Right. It seemed a very distant thing that I didn't even know if I would still be playing when Wisconsin would have a team. So it was in the back of my mind, but nothing came about it. But then when I heard I was signed with Memphis, when I heard that Madison was going to be a team, and I was at Memphis, heart and soul at Memphis, but a little light bulb popped up for future opportunities, and I was happy for the state and the community as well. Madison's such a good place, and to have for them to have a team and someone to support, it's incredible.
Absolutely. So just obviously we talked about you.
Oh, what up, Pat?
You've grown up. Patty's on.
Yeah, what up, Pat?
Legend. But just talk a little bit about your youth career. What did that look like for you growing up?
Yeah, so I started playing with the Bavarian Club out of Milwaukee. It's an old German club with a lot of history. And I've played with the Bavarian Club when I was about 13, 14. And then when I was 13, 14, I had the opportunity to start, to go on trial and start training with the Chicago Fire.
And that's how far of a drive is that from Milwaukee to Chicago Fire? That's a bit of a hike.
Yeah, it was about 2 hours, no traffic, one way.
So that's I mean, so you're committed to soccer at that point.
Yeah, so I remember this was my beginning of my sophomore year of high school. I would tell my last period teacher, I go, listen, I have this opportunity. Some days, is it okay if I leave 15 minutes early? And they were really cool with it. But
have you gone back and thanked that teacher now since
you're being a professional? I have not. I think with sports, and you might know, I have a lot of teachers to thank throughout high school, and college. I probably wouldn't be who I am and where I am today without them. So
absolutely.
Thank you to all my teachers.
Shout out.
But yeah, it was a crazy opportunity, and my dad, being in soccer, kind of said, the developmental academy is a way to improve. It's one of the highest caliber league. And if you want to be a soccer player, if you want to, get better, be better, this is an opportunity. And I kudos to him. He never forced me to do it. He never, this and that. He just provided the opportunity for me to be seen. I think, as well as some other coaches from a Bavarian club. And I went down there, did well, and they kept inviting me back until I was kind of on that squad, which was incredible. And that first year, we had such a squad. I mean, it was Drew Connor was on that. Elliot Boers was on that. We had we had such a good team. And I know the year before that they had won the academy, and a lot of those guys stayed. Some of them moved up, but that was one of the best decisions soccer-wise I think I've made in my youth career, for sure. I mean, the amount of detail and focus, and they just want you to be a better soccer player.
Yeah.
And coaches like Larry Sunderland, TK, even John Dolinsky, they were all around, and they pushed us. I mean, it was a different kind of coaching. It was professional. That's what it was. And the Bavarian club, gave me my roots and kind of gave me the foundation of being a soccer player. But I think being at Chicago Fire, what up, Morgan, taught me to be a youth professional in certain things, that I need to do as a player and as a team, and how to act like going forward. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many good coaches from Chicago Fire, as well as players from those years.
Yeah, but that time was interesting for me because there was a lot of life changes for me going into the second part of my sophomore year. So I had only been playing with the Fire for probably 2 months, and the Fire had a connection with a boarding school in Lake Forest with Kevin Verson was the athletic director, and it wasn't as much of a connection as they'd say, because I don't know the kind of logistics of it, but in my eyes there was. Sorry if any viewers from my boarding school get offended, but they came and said, listen, we can get you into this boarding school. It'll be a lot easier for you to be more consistent, to come to training. Manny Chavez, he was there. Christian Lamelli, he was there. Both great players with the Fire. Went on to have great college careers as well. And it felt kind of like, all right, in an instant, I said, yeah, let's do it. So in December, I told all of my friends, which was like 3 from high school, I said, I'm going to boarding school, and kind of, wiped my hands, said, see ya, and went to boarding school. And I was there my whole junior year and half of my senior year. And it was then that I realized, I want to continue to play, go to college. And then I actually wanted to try and graduate early from high school. And that was the thing, is my dad being a college coach, I've seen a lot of players and a lot of foreign guys, they wanted to come in early to have like an acclimation period in the spring, to then be even better in the fall, kind of almost no surprises. They know the team, they know academic side of it. And that was something that I wanted to do, obviously not being a foreign guy, but if I could be able to do that, that was something I wanted to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, shout out, because I grew up in Minnesota, so shout out to the Minnesota-Wisconsin border battle. But yeah, I think from what I've heard of players that have gone the route of going in a semester early, it's been very beneficial to the player, because now you kind of get to figure out what college courses and schedules are like in spring season, which is much less stressful than coming in as a freshman, trying to figure out what college is like, let alone what a full season of university football is. You have an interesting, I think, route to college soccer, or where you decide to go. A
Yeah.
unique experience that most of us don't have the opportunity to do. Talk about how you ended up at Marquette. Were you looking at other schools at first? What was the final decision that was like, that's where I want to go?
Um, well, growing up, I had the dynamic, obviously, with my dad, but I knew he was a college coach, and I was around it all the time, so I could see, and I was a part, kind of the ins and outs when I was younger, not really knowing, but I was still a part of that. Getting to go into the locker room when I was a little younger and doing this and that. But then as I got into high school, I could see kind of on the soccer side, oh, this is how the Marquette coaching staff goes about this. This is how they have gone about this. This is how my dad was a coach at UWM, and that's something I admired. And obviously, it came to me that I wanna play for my dad. I didn't leave any other schools necessarily out of it. I made my decision pretty early, but I did have a few other schools that I had in mind. But I knew ultimately that I did want to play for my dad, and not just because he was my dad. It was more of because I had an admiration, because I knew what type of coach he was, just based off, living with him, being around it, and everything like that.
Now, how did the recruiting process go with that? Like, is he like, hey, I want to offer you a contract? Then he goes and sits on the other side of the table next to you and is like, all right, let's do it.
That's a good question. When it started the recruiting process, I kind of sat down with my dad and said, listen, I want to, if you want me to come to Marquette and play, if that's something, if you guys think that I'm a player that could help your program, then I want to be treated like that. I want to, how you guys recruit other players, that's how I kind of want to be a part of it. So that kind of, we didn't have to then talk about it at dinner, or, we're watching a movie, you know what I'm saying? And looking back, he did a really good job, because he left a lot of the recruiting to the two assistant coaches, Steve Bodie and Marcelo Santos, who really took kind of that to heart, that what I mentioned with my dad, who then talked to them about it. So it was the same thing. Like, even though I had been to all the kind of the facilities and trailed along before, they brought me in, showed me around, were very good with that, sent packages, things like that. And ultimately it was Coach Bodie and Coach Santos who did most of that recruiting process. And I think at the end, I can't remember completely, but I think at the end when I did commit, I think my mom was next to me. Coach Bodie, Coach Santos were on the other side of the table, and my dad was kind of right in the middle. But it was kudos to everyone, because I'm sure things can get kind of mixed up with that. But it was very transparent with everything, and it wasn't kind of like the everyday, like I said, at the dinner table, or we're having breakfast and it's like, oh, like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? It's like, no, okay, there's a rhyme and reason to all of it, and they did a good job with that.
Yeah, I think it's such a unique experience. I think it's very cool, but I think it's also one that very quickly, as you said, like it's sometimes hard to keep like the lines from blurring at all, in a sense. You usually, when a player goes to university, they say goodbye to their parents because they're not going to see them. Now you're seeing your dad maybe even more than a normal day. You come in. I know you're obviously highly recruited. You're, I think, the highest ranked player in, was it top drawer soccer that Marquette had at the time. So obviously, like, you earn the spot to be there. But you go into playing, and now you have teammates that know this is coach's son. I'm sure that's difficult for you. I'm sure that's challenging at times for your dad, because someone does a hard tackle on you. Do they get mad at the player? Does your dad get mad at them because he's your son or not? And then on top of that, you start and play, a lot of your freshman year. Not saying undeserved, but what is that like navigating that with players that might originally think
That's a great question, and that was a question that especially my freshman year was on my mind all the time. Coming in, obviously, I think I had a chip on my shoulder because of that reason. I didn't want at any time someone to think that I was here just because my dad was coach or just because, we had that relationship. And I wanted to kind of make sure that every time that I stepped on the field or we had a meeting or whatever it was where he was Coach Bennett, that I treated him accordingly and he treated me as he would a player. And that kind of translated to he might say he was a little harder on me than other players. But yeah, like I said, it was important for me to show that when I'm on the field, he is Coach Bennett. And I made sure that by, when I was on the field calling him coach, respecting him as a coach, even though I would respect him as my dad as well. But yeah, going in, there was a chip on my shoulder, and I wanted to prove myself for many ways, but that was definitely one of them. And in the springtime, there were a lot of good players. We had a big senior class, and one of the Chicago guys, Brian Shashelka, who now is the assistant at Marquette, he was playing in a similar position as me. Charlie Hoover, who I had grown up playing with at Bavarian Club and looking up to, he was up playing in the position as well. And I remember our first game was at UWM my freshman year, and I didn't get the start, but it was okay. I haven't done enough to earn this spot. They're seniors in front who have 3 years of, in quotes, money in the bank, of showing what they got. And unfortunately, that game, B had he came off injured. I think maybe it was a concussion or whatever. And like, in sports, an unfortunate thing happens, but it, can open an opportunity. So for the next 5 or 6 games, it was me and Charlie Hoover in there. And we won a few games, and I think the next 2 or 3 games I had scored. And it was just a time where I thought I can take this opportunity. Obviously so unfortunate for B, because he was and is such a baller. I mean, that guy can ball. And obviously it was unfortunate, but like, and a lot of people know in sports, you got, take your opportunity as a player. And I felt that was, my time. And then I think that's when I kind of started to prove myself. I was on the field. I can do it in training, and this, training behind the scenes, extra practice, but when it comes down to it, it's, in the games. And I think I did enough to prove myself and gain a little bit respect from the players.
Yeah,
even more.
And obviously, freshman year, you get all rookie team. And I think, obviously having success on the field is going to help some of those maybe issues between coach and son, teammates and son and coach, and all of that. So obviously, getting your opportunity and taking and doing well with it is important to that. You do well during your college career. I know you get, second team Big East. You have quite a few awards. You're ranked preseason votes high on a lot of people's lists. When in that time period of university soccer does professional soccer become kind of the focus?
The beginning. Well, see, and this is a good question. It was in my head. It was the beginning of my junior year, but I think in the first few games that I took it too much in my head. I was thinking about it too much. that it affected how I was playing and kind of where I was in that moment. And I remember after we went to Indiana and we played Notre Dame and Indiana, and I played absolutely terrible. Like it was at Indiana in one of these, beginning of the season tournaments where you have, professional scouts there, this and that. And I remember sitting in the hotel room with my dad, talking to me as a dad, as a coach, as a mentor. Because I was like, I just feel something off. He goes, well, right now you're playing for Marquette University, right? He goes, the only way to move forward, and it was to obviously play games but win, because then people will show, and to focus on the team you are on right now and the players you're playing with and who you are right now. And that kind of clicked in, and it was, my mindset was, I still want to be a professional soccer player, but my mind isn't 100% there when it should be.
Right. Be present in the moment.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And so that season, I did my best to be at, my mind be at Marquette University, because who knows if I'm going to become a professional, if I'll get a contract, this or that. If we lose every game and I play, our team plays terrible, then, there's no chance. So it's like, be present where you are. So, but in my head, I always wanted to be it. But my junior year, it clicked in where, okay, if our team does well, then I'm able to do well. My teammates are able to do well. And now it becomes more of okay, this could be an opportunity when I leave school, or, when the time comes.
Right. Yeah. So then talk about, because obviously, everyone has a different route to professional soccer, how it works, everything. But I think you grow up in Milwaukee, you play a little bit in Chicago, then you're living in our university in Milwaukee. And then you're like, first professional contract takes you far away. How did that come to pass? What was that?
It's crazy. Looking back, I think my life has been made up of a lot of decisions that I've made in like 5 days, like life change. Like I told you about Chicago Fire, moving into a boarding school. This was slightly similar. It was the summer going into my senior year, and I was playing PDL with the Fire under 23s, like I had been for a while. And there was an opportunity to go to Cyprus. They had there was a guy there, I think, who helped bring guys to the U.S. And through kind of that connection, I was just able to get. It was supposed to be a week training. It really, in my head, it was okay. Like when there is training with a professional club, it's a trial. But I was thinking, I'm going there for training, see what the professional environment's like there. And then I was planning on going from there to England for another 2 weeks, staying with family, doing as much training as I could to then be ready for the senior season, which I was really excited about. We had some new fresh faces. Luca Purpa was coming in, Patrick Seagrass, Connor Alba. I mean, ballers were coming in their freshman year. And being a senior, hopefully being a leader, possibly team captain, was something that I had, that I wanted to do. I had my eyes on. 3 days into this training in Cyprus, the guy brought me over and offered me a contract. And
Which I feel like it's usually like you come on trial and it takes 2 weeks to get off of the contract.
Exactly. Which I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, I'm coming back to Marquette. I'm getting my degree. I'm finishing early. And then hopefully, going back overseas, or hopefully getting drafted, or,
Right.
And so I called home, and I called a guy who kind of worked with contracts and said, they offered me a contract, this and that. We came back with with a counter, and they said okay, and it was that. So I stayed there.
What was that call with your dad? Because obviously, as like a father, the goal of their son reaching professional is amazing. As a coach, you planning to have you on his team in a couple weeks, and then you gone has got to be difficult.
So this is funny. Before I left, we had a conversation about me like coming back to Marquette. He goes, "Oh, if you get offered a contract, would you come back to Marquette?" And I said, "Well, there's a lot of things that go into it. Depends on the contract, depends on the club, this and that. But I think ultimately, right now, I think I want to come back and play." And he goes, "Yeah, I think that's a good idea, but it's obviously it's whatever's in your best interest." And then when I gave the call, he goes, "Oh my goodness, okay." And then from that moment, he kind of told me, he goes, "Either way, like I want you obviously to be happy, but I know that coming back to Marquette will be a good opportunity for you. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, like this is your dream. This is what you've been working for your entire life. If this is something that you really want to do, then then this is it."
And I'm gonna assume too, like as your dad, obviously he cares more about you as his son than as a player for his university. So
yeah.
I feel like it's at the end of the day right. too, he can't be mad.
Right, no, 100%. I'm sure there may have been a little disappointment, obviously, from a dad's side, seeing their son in a senior,
mm-hmm.
As a senior going through the last bit, and then as a coach too. I'm sure a lot of coaches love to see their players go from being a freshman to being senior, how they've changed,
mm-hmm.
Stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, he said, if this is your dream. And I remember before I made a commitment or signed anything, I went to the stadium. It was a preseason game, and I watched it. And I remember walking into the stadium, and the stadium probably holds close to 10,000. And I walked in, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is why, this is one of the reasons why I play soccer. This is one of the reasons, like, I want to be out there. I want to play." So I ended up signing there, and that was the start of my professional career. I had it. It took me 3, maybe 4 days to make the decision between, getting contract, countering, and then, I was like, okay, well, now I'm moving to Cyprus. And
did you go home first, or did you?
No, so I stayed. So I went to Cyprus with a carry-on bag with 3 shirts, 2 shorts, a pair of pants, and my boots. And I stayed there for another a month and a half. And we went on a preseason trip to Poland. And then when that finished, I went home for 48 hours, got my things, and then flew back.
Oh, wow.
And then, in Cyprus, it was phenomenal. It was, talk about being kind of put into such a professional environment and passionate soccer setting. They love football.
Yeah,
they love football. And the players that I played with on the team was called Anorthosis Famagusta, were very good players. We had 2 players who played for Brighton in the championship. We had 1 player who scored double-digit goals in La Liga. We had multiple players playing in second division in Spain. 1 player who I think was in the top 3 scorers of the Polish league before he came. They were top quality players. So for me to be a young
no one else from Marquette.
But no one from Marquette, exactly. And no Americans too. I can't. I'm trying to think about, even in the league at the time, I don't think there were any Americans there.
Were you signed as an American or with your British passport?
That's a good question. I think I was signed with my British passport, which helped, and that's helped me. That's helped me kind of go back and forth, and I think that was one of the main reasons that it was a lot easier to sign me as a foreigner because of that.
Right.
And one of my teammates from Cyprus, Milan, what up? You do not want to get into a tackle with him.
One to avoid.
Hey, he's a good player. But yeah, the players were incredible, and I wanted to just be as much of a sponge as possible because I knew where these guys came from, what they were like as players, what they were like in training, and just take as much in as I could. And I thought going there, I'm kind of just ready for whatever happens. I'm going to train, obviously, the hardest I can and do what I can. And just be ready for my opportunity to play whenever that may be. But like I said, just kind of put my head down, work hard in training, and learn. That was like a big thing for me, is learning from these top players who have been to these leagues, the championship in England, in Spain, first and second in Spain. Milan was in the under-23 World Cup with Serbia, or under-20s. It was just a time for me to learn and be a sponge. And
absolutely.
Here comes one of the stories that I wanted to tell you. The fans, especially the ultras in Cyprus, were incredible, but so passionate. Every game they had flares. They were chants, nonstop singing. And I remember we were playing a rival team. And both sides, one side at our stadium, it's almost caged off 30 feet high. And then the cages are here, or the fence, sorry. And then there's like a little almost moat, like trough area probably like 5 feet down. So it stops fans from running onto the field, this and that. And I remember it got close to halftime, and the rival fans started pushing on the fence and broke it open. And one of them had a flare and hopped under the fence into this little moat trough area, and then ran around the field. And all you could really see is the top of his head and the flare and the smoke going. He got to our supporters section and launched the flare up into our supporters and ran back. This started something that I never thought I would witness, or be there for it. It went crazy. Our supporters, everyone started lighting flares and tossing them onto the field. There was a SWAT team of like 20 that came out on the field and were like, no. They broke open the fence on our side and were trying to get on. And then the other fans were throwing flares at the SWAT team members, and it was mayhem. But it was all because obviously the tension between and the stories behind the rivalry and this and that. But it's also
Did you finish the game?
We did finish the game. The SWAT team got reinforcements, took everything off, and then stood there behind the goal across the whole way for the rest of the time. We had a lot of support from obviously our supporters, but from the SWAT teams when needed. When sometimes results didn't go our way and this and that outside of the locker room. But once again, that was just something to realize, football is loved and it means so much to certain people. And that in Cyprus, I learned many things, but that was one of the big things. Is it's not just the game. It's even more, especially to fans in that. And that's why it can be, it can be a little volatile at times because, people want to win. There's so much more that goes into it. But I mean, I wouldn't trade that experience for anything. And
so what happens with Cyprus? How does it come to kind of an end?
Yeah. Well, like in sports, you have board of directors. You do have a kind of somewhat of political side to it. The four guys that brought me in and signed me eventually got the boot, and new coaching staff came in and I don't think saw the same thing as the guys that brought me in. It was a tough pill to swallow, just kind of moving, my whole life and leaving my college season. And they kind of said, we're going different directions and we want, older players, this and that. And it was difficult for it was probably 2 or 3 months, or maybe 2.5 months. I was kind of in like a holding pattern where, I don't just want to leave. I have a contract for 3 years, then it got into, money, paperwork, this and that. And I remember talking with one of the guys, one of the older guys. He goes, as a young player, the most important thing is, to get games, is to be seen by the right people. And, you want to leave on the best terms for yourself and with the club as possible. But like I said, if you have, like he told me, if you have a place that you can go where you think it'll be a better situation, then do it, rather than just being held here, sometimes not being able to train, sometimes being able to train. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, I have a lot of stories, for a different time that we can discuss about that sort of thing, but I don't want to get into it too much. But luckily, right before I went to Cyprus, I did a week in Kansas City training with Sporting, but also I think it was like 5 days with Swope and 2 days with Sporting. And so when I heard the news that things are changing in Cyprus, this and that, I started getting on the phone, seeing what other options. Could I get loaned out to a team in England, Germany, Holland, and didn't get much help, which was a little annoying. But
any regret at that moment? Like, man, maybe I should have just stayed in university, finished my senior year, seen what would have come up in the U.S.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think for a lot of my first few years, I always kind of went back to, what if I had done this, or what if I had done that? And that's something I look back on thinking I could have changed the way I thought about it. Because I think I hung up a little bit too much when I was younger on kind of the what ifs, rather than, and almost too, fast forward quick, when I went to with Swope, signed with Swope, but didn't play as much as I wanted to. And the same thing with Cyprus is, in my head, I was doing a lot of what ifs, but also I was not blaming, but kind of pointing the finger a little bit of, my coaches got fired, new coaches came in. There were a lot of other better, older players in Kansas City. It was, this and that. Oh, the coach doesn't like me, this and that. And then when I fast forward again, when I left Kansas City to want to go to Europe again, I kind of realized, dude, you cannot keep pointing the finger at anyone else, because if you do this, you're going to be in the same thing that you've gone to a club, you think you do well, or you're doing maybe just enough, and then things don't go your way and you're, pointing the finger. So when I left,
I tell my players that, and my, especially guys in leadership positions, captains and stuff. Yeah. It's like that complete ownership. You can be 100% right that because the coach left and this one didn't like you, whatever. But if you point the blame outward, there's no growth inward. And so you're going to get stuck in the same situation.
Exactly. And if I, now, if I could go back to those 2 years, of me being in Cyprus and me being in Kansas City, which were probably the two most well-known, well-established clubs that I've been at, I would have told myself that. I go, even more so. There were times where, you know, I wasn't saying I didn't work hard or didn't do that, but like point the finger back at myself. Like, what can I do that I've been doing and do it even better? And what are the things that other people are doing? Why are other people playing and not me? And how can I change that? So when I went to, so then kind of fast forward, I did my thing in Kansas City. Very professional. You know, I had a lot of good friends that I made there. Got a chance to play against Drogba, Strong Right Phillips. I mean, almost obviously, what do they say? It only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. But I remember my debut in San Antonio. It was the ball got cut back to the 18, and I hit it first time. And one of their central defenders like dove, and he was wearing one of those caps.
Yeah.
The ball hit his cap flew off, and the ball went straight up in the air and then came down and hit the crossbar. And I thought, dang, that could have been. But, you know, obviously sports happen in weird ways. Exactly. But once again, I think at Kansas City, even more, it taught me to be a professional, because they, you know, I think Peter Vermes from top to bottom make sure that everyone is being professional, acting professional, or learning to be, you know, for the younger guys, learning to be. And if you're not, then you're out. He's very cutthroat, very honest, very straightforward. And our coach, Nikola, was the same way. You know, he told it how it was, and I respect that, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, I thought, okay, still, I gotta get games, and I got a call in maybe July from a guy in England who called both me and my dad and the guy that I was working with, saying, "Oh, I think we can get you on trial with a few clubs over here." So I thought, well, you know, I like it in Kansas City. I'm not playing as much as I want, but I think at that time, I think, you know what, I can continue. I can be better than these players, and I can play. You know, it's the end of the season. Guys might get injured. That's what I was thinking in my head. And then once again, talking to the guy who's helped me, and also with my dad, it was, you know, you got to get games. You got to be seen. You got to consistently play. And so I was once again in my head, it was, you know, I was split, and it was the guy was like, yeah, if you want to do this, you got to be over, and you got to be overseas in 3 days.
Not much time to think about it.
So I was under contract at a club that I wanted to be at. I was getting paid to play. I was, you know, in such a professional environment, having the chance to train and be a part of Sporting KC, playing with players that are getting signed to first team contract, this and that, but just not playing, obviously, as much as I would have liked to. But I have an opportunity to go back to Europe and prove myself there again. So I'm split, and I said, you know what? I talked with Zoran, who's part of the first team staff, and I talked with him about what he thought, and he just gave me some advice, which I'll always remember and kind of thank him for. And ultimately, I decided, you know what? Pack my bags. You know, I signed the paperwork saying, you know, my contract with Swope is obviously no more. Packed a carry-on again and went to England. And I stayed with my cousins up north for 2 weeks, trying to work with this guy to find clubs. Up north, there wasn't much, so then I went down south and stayed with family friend for a month. And I was training with Mansfield Town, which was a League Two club, but only with their under 18s. And I was 21 at the time, and I kept saying to the guy, you know, like, when can I get in with the first team? When can I get in with the first team? I even had a game, their 18s mixed with their under 20s and played a preseason game. And I played in that game, scored, thought I played well. And I kept telling this guy, hey, when can I get in the first team? Pushing. I go, this is why I came to England. and nothing came about it. So I remember I was in my family friend's house, ready to book a flight home. Like I remember it so clear. It was on my computer screen, like about to click it. And I called my parents and said, "Hey, listen, like I'm coming home." And then crazy enough, my dad had talked with a guy about something that wasn't in regards to me, but then the guy had brought it up saying, "Hey, I have a team in the Czech Republic." And my dad said, "Can he give you a call?" I go, all this of, "Oh, I have a team for you." Then I go, I take a plane with a bat. It's like,
I've seen this song and dance before.
I got to a point where I was like, dude, like, I don't know if I can do that again. Like, if I get to the Czech Republic and it's this again, like, I am going to be like, I don't know. It's difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. It's mentally just so draining.
Yeah. And that's what it was. And it's like, I'm thinking like, okay, I'd come from a club in Cyprus with these types of players and was like valued this and that. Then I went to, an organization with Sporting, thinking, and the whole time I thought, and I knew I was like good enough, but it's like you said, it's like, it's draining just, getting told, "Oh, you have an opportunity," and then you don't. And then, "Oh, we might have this," and then you don't. But that's how it is. That's the difference. I wouldn't say the difference, but that's part of what Europe is. It's like a lot of, he said, she said, and then, when you knock on the door, it's like no one's home.
Yeah.
So I had a talk with this guy, and I told him that. I go, "Listen, I willingly got out of a contract to come to England thinking that I would at least have a trial, and nothing came about." And I know that was another tough pill to swallow, but I go, but I want to play and I want to continue to play. And I don't want this to like tarnish my like aspirations of continuing to be a professional. I didn't want to be like a 2-year American guy who kind of goes and then comes back and you know what, I can use my degree, which I didn't have at the time. Actually, I did not have a degree because I left early. But the guy goes, "Listen, like you're gonna train with the team, and he's gonna see how they like you, and then kind of go from there. If I know anything and I know the coach, then I think he will like you." Mm-hmm. And after the first day of going to Czech Republic, I played with a team called Vyškov, which was the far east side of Czech Republic. It was about 20 minutes outside of the second biggest city. No one really spoke English in that town. No one at all. And even on the team, we had 2 guys who spoke a little bit, so they were kind of my translators. But after the first day, the coach kind of sat me down and said, "Yeah, we want you. We want you to play. We think you can be vital to our."
And that's
real team.
Real quick with that, like what I tell, obviously, because we have younger listeners, is like if clubs are pulling you for a week, 2, not giving you an answer, like if they value you, inside of 1 or 2 trainings, like they can tell they value you and want you. Otherwise, it's like they're maybe sitting to see if something better comes along, or they need you for training or what have you. But it's kind of like, it's hard because players need a contract, so they're willing to put up with it. But at the same time, for a player, like you have to know your worth and have enough self-confidence almost to be like, if they're, yanking your chain, so to speak.
No, right. And that was a big thing. And like you said, I think, and when a coach then does tell you that, you do have that like even extra bit, you have to always have that confidence going in, especially to a trial of, I'm good enough to play here. I'm good enough to do this. But then like you said, when a coach kind of says it right off the bat, that kind of gives you a sense of, okay, I need to continue to prove it every day, but that's kind of why I came. So I did a half a season in the Czech Republic, which was, I mean, it was the third division in Czech Republic, so it's the third tier. Some really good players, but I was able to play. I played almost every game. I think scored a few times, assists a few times, and just I thought was a vital role in that team. And
was it hard though, without not having English and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the first pregame speech was all in Czech, but because I was in the starting lineup, I could hear my last name, so it was, Czech, blah 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 blah, Bennett, blah 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 blah, Bennett, blah blah blah, and I'm thinking like, oh shit, like I'm definitely gonna mess up this first set piece, or not put it in the right spot, or this and that. Luckily, I had our goalkeeper knew a little bit of English. He was in school still, and so he kind of helped me out. But it was a lot of kind of charades and hand motions, and I'd always grab before they went out. I'd always grab the guy who spoke a little bit of English and would talk to him, and then he would talk to the coach. And then the funniest thing was, I as things get heated in the team, I got into it with one of our players. It was like just how you would with a teammate, but I don't speak any Czech and he doesn't speak any English. So it was me like getting heated in English and him getting heated in in Czech, and then our coach kind of like had to slightly explain certain things, and I got the translator in, and I was like, at the end I was kind of laughing because it was so funny. But that was another thing that kind of you have to realize, or you have to learn, or you're not going to succeed. It's like, I can say, oh, I don't speak Czech. What do these guys think? Most of them are all Czech, and Americans come in thinking that he can play with you guys. And that was kind of like what we talked about before. I wasn't kind of pointing fingers at anything. I was pointing fingers at myself, saying, okay, you don't speak Czech, so what is the best way to learn what the guys want from you, what the coach wants from you? Do you have to do a little bit of extra? Do you have to sit with him afterwards and just, get a whiteboard and a dry erase out? It's stuff like that where I was like, I have to kind of take control of that. And then it came to November, and they have a break in the season, I think from November to like February. So I came home and was trying to click on with a club, and I ended up going to LA to go on trial with Los Dos. And they had a lot of guys on trial who had been at clubs. I remember guys from St. Louis, Walker Hume from FC Dallas was there with me. He was my roommate, good player. There was a lot of good players, and it seemed like they were going to sign a few guys. Which they ended up not signing, and everyone was kind of had their eyes kind of, oh. And I honestly thought when I went to Los Dos that they were going to sign me. And I remember it so clearly. I went in to the last meeting at the end of the week, pretty confident. And Coach Munoz kind of looks at me and kind of says, I think he was being pretty honest. He goes, listen, like, I know you can play. We can see that you can play. But we're going through a different route. We have a lot of academy guys coming through. We got a lot of first team guys. And then I remember the last thing he said to me was, so are you going to stick with it? Are you going to still play? And in my head, I was like, what? It's like, of course I am. Like, I've been all the way around the world and back. And then
I didn't grind
LA,
for nothing.
Yeah, to LA on a trial, not just to like give up because I came for a week. I've been through that. So then the next few months were a little difficult because that was pretty close to the end of kind of, when trials are and this and that for the USL. So for like 2 months, I was just training on my own. And I had a booklet of all the USL coaches, all the MLS coaches, trying to figure out their email, their phone numbers, and was just like emailing, calling, and didn't get a whole ton of stuff back. So then I thought, you know what, like what I might have to do is I knew that the League One was going to be a league. So I was looking at teams that were going to transition to League One. Tormenta was one of them. So I got a hold of their coach and kind of talked with him to see about how they were going to transition from 23s to League One. And I had a long talk with a lot of coaches. I go, I can either go back to the Czech Republic, but it was good, but it wasn't really where I wanted it to be or where I wanted to go. I kind of realized that I wanted to make my bones in the States because I got a little bit of a taste when I was at Sporting and felt like I could do it, and then, went back overseas. But I wanted to do it in the States. So I kind of thought and came to the conclusion that I got to find a club that has an under 23s team and do well enough that I can then train with whatever first team they have and then get signed from there. So I was looking up or the teams that were going to go League One. So Tormenta, and then I ended up calling John Perlman at OKC when he was there. He's at Tucson now. And I kind of told him my situation. And he goes, we would love to have you. We actually have 2 or 3 guys also in your similar situation who have been playing professional, who've been out of a club, but who need to get games. And we do have a lot of opportunity to sign with the to train with the first team and possibly get signed. So I thought, I might have to do this. I've been playing. I remember playing in this league when I was 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And I was like I'm going back to it. And that point I could have said, you know what, I'm better than this. But then I would have said, oh, I'm better than this and not have a club. Yeah. And be sitting in my parents' basement, like, doing nothing.
Yeah, that ego thing usually doesn't help in situations like this.
And so I thought this is something that I got to do. And once again, I had that kind of mentality of, okay, I got to point the finger at myself again. And if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna get that opportunity. So I'm gonna be the best player on that team. I'm gonna help them try and win as many games, be the best teammate that I can be, to then prove to the Energy's first team that I can do that.
Right.
We're back.
Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, no. So it kind of got to that point where I was like, I might have to go down a little bit to then make my bones again back in the States, because I think doing that stint in the Czech Republic, I don't think that maybe I was forgotten, but a lot of times I think when American players go overseas, that when they come back, because there's a pretty large market and it's getting bigger for players in the States, that sometimes
and every year, I mean, how many more players enter that market?
Exactly. So it was so I ended up packing my bags in summer, going to Oklahoma, and I think John Perlman helped me in that kind of situation that I was in. He gave me even more confidence and kind of told me, like, listen, like, if you do well, if we're going to give you an opportunity with the first team, but like, this will be good for you no matter what, and he pushed me, and he made me just want it even that more. And and I ended up playing really well. I was playing left back that whole time and scored as many goals, I think, in a season that I ever did. Had more assists than I ever did.
Your free kicks were on point that year.
Yeah, at playing left back, and also playing in that Oklahoma Heat. That was I'm not great with the Heat, but that was something else. But that was good, and I got opportunity to train with the first team. So did a few other guys.
We had Cody Lorendi on.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's such a good guy. I mean, he was, when you talk about top professionals, if he's not on your list, then you got something wrong. But there's good players, but at the end of my time, they had a full roster. I think they started winning games, and they kind of said, you know what, it's just not something that we don't need. We don't need really a left back right now. We don't need this. You did well, this and that, but sorry. And that kind of hit me. But I thought, you know what? I had a good season, and luckily it was all filmed on tape. So that week that they told me no, I came back and I made a video of just that season, and then I sent it to everyone again. I sent it to that whole list. And the guy that had been working with me to find clubs actually sent it to Memphis, and they liked it, and they were new clubs, so they were trying to get players in and get people signed, and they liked it. So that I came back in July, I think, and then by September, I want to say, I had already had a few calls with the coach, and then was signed, I think, early or late September.
Now, how good does that feel? Because it's like you've been bouncing around, you've been this country, PDL, hoping for a first team, and now you finally are signed to a team.
No, it was phenomenal. It felt really good. It felt like, because I had a vision in my head that, okay, if you need games, if you go down and do what you need to do at this level in your current situation, that then things will open up for you. And I had that vision going in, and because if I didn't have that vision, I think I would have just had a summer league. You know, I'd have just been like, oh, it's just a summer league. It's just another time to be out in the sun and playing soccer. But I really had that summer had a vision of, okay, this is going to be my stepping stone to the next club. I didn't want to take anything. I didn't want to take anything away from the club that I was at. I was saying I want to win games for Oklahoma City Energy's under 23, but in a personal note, I want to use this as a stepping stone.
And I think what's interesting, going back to your junior year at Marquette, you're thinking, I want to go professional. You're almost thinking like too much about the professional, and you have a couple bad games at Marquette. Now, fast forward your development as a player, you want to use this as a stepping stone, but you figure out how to succeed at OKC, which then will lead to the next success.
100%, and that's kind of the evolution of obviously myself as a player, and that was really 100%. I had to make a plan. I had to stick with it. Expect things weren't going to go my way sometimes, but just continue to work, continue to do that, and it ended up like going to Memphis, and it was really exciting because there was a lot of hype behind Memphis, and a lot of good things going on. And then the season I trained. Between that when I got back from OKC to knowing that I was gonna have a club in February, I was actually able to finish my degree at Marquette.
Oh, there you go.
So I trained that whole 4 months I was back home. I knew I was out. I didn't have a club, but I knew that I was going to have a club, and I told the coaches that, I'll be training and I'll be fit and I'll be ready to go. And then I finished my degree, which was huge.
Nice.
And so then I went to Memphis, and I still have some of my best friends are from that team. And I know Morgan checked in a little bit ago, but it was good. And it was the excitement and the energy behind the whole community and setting and the league was really good. The training. But once again, it was another situation where, I'm doing what I can do to try and play. And it was the difference, I think, this time was that I was, kind of pointing the finger at myself and still trying to do better, this and that. And the coach and assistant coach were telling me, you know what, you're doing good, and we're still relatively early in the season. We're going to need you. You're going to get your opportunity. Like, keep doing what you're doing. And I thought, okay, this is another time where if I continue to do what I'm doing, but also push myself, that what they're saying will come true. Mm-hmm. And it kind of came true, but in a way that I didn't think it would. They had got a call from Madison about a certain player, and then had asked about me. And coach brought me in and said, listen, like, we love having you here. We think that you will get an opportunity to play here, but Madison's has called about you, and I think you'll get even more time there, and a better opportunity to prove yourself and see how you do, and then, possibly then re-signing here, depending on how you do with games and stuff, this and that. But at the end of the day, it's another opportunity for you to possibly, play more, even though we like you here. And I thought, okay, yeah, I want to be here, but at the same time, getting an opportunity at another club again, just to play was big. And
now, do you think part of it that made it an easier transition is because it's close to home? Is that at all part of it, or not at all?
Yeah, I think it made it easier on a personal level, that it's, things are a little more familiar. But I think what also made it a little easier is I had talked with Daryl on the phone, and he just I could hear it in his voice and what he was saying, that he knew who I was as a player, and knew that he wanted me at Madison for a reason. And I know that Tim Mulqueen, at my coach at Memphis, wanted the same. But I think just the situations, he's going to put his best 11 on the field. Yeah. And for a certain amount of time, I wasn't in that. Okay. But I don't think that changed that he wanted me at Memphis to be ready for when they needed me, for when my opportunity came. But I think Tim also said, it might be in your best interest to get games for you, because you have been working hard doing this, and this might be the opportunity we were telling you about. Maybe not for us, but played a few games with Madison. Had a few full 90s. And thinking about it, this was the first since Oklahoma was the first time really getting in good minutes. Mm-hmm. So, and I was ready, but obviously, not everything goes your way, but I was ready for it, and, just willing to stick it out. And then it came to the end of the season, sat down with Daryl, and he says, you know what, we want you back. We liked what you did. We liked what you brought in the locker room, on the field. I think, and then I called Tim back at Memphis, had a good chat with him. And he said, I think that's a good spot for you. I think if you coming back here, you might be in a similar situation, bringing in a lot of new players, this and that. But I think he was good, and I still have a really good relationship with almost everyone at Memphis. We played him in preseason, actually. So I got to, in Birmingham, and I got to talk with Tim and Ben, and Tim Howard was there as well, who is also just a class act. I mean, he knows everyone's name, a part of that organization by first name, and willing to reach out and everything like that. And I still had some buddies on the team, which was nice. But it was good to hear from Daryl, especially at the end of the season. It was almost the first time, like, concrete, that a coach in my professional career that hadn't got fired or hadn't moved on said, "We want you back."
Mm-hmm. That's huge. It's like,
yeah,
not that you can live and breathe by what a coach's opinion is, because everyone's going to be different. But when you are at a club and the club, and especially the coach values you, that's massive.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think that's why Daryl, as a coach, for me, it's like, he's straightforward. He'll say what you need to hear, not necessarily sometimes what you want to hear, but that's what it takes, Mm-hmm. And he the big thing is, like, I think he trusts me, and that was a big thing of why I wanted to come back, because of kind of how the situation played out, how he was as a coach, and also our assistant Neil as well. He'll say it exactly how it is, no fluffing it up anyway. And I like that, I can take through everything I've been through. I can take, a little bit of, or a lot of it of, this is how it is. You might not like it, but this is what's going to take for you to get better. So I think with everyone, I was really excited for this season, because to kick off and get after it. Still know a lot of the guys on the Madison team, and getting to play in the preseason games. Obviously, I'm fortunate with all the COVID stuff and the seasons being postponed. But no, it's a good situation, and it is, like you said, it's nice to be closer to home, but more importantly, it's nicer to be at a club
where you're valued.
Exactly. And I think at Memphis, I definitely was valued as a person and a player. But I think there's just a little more opportunity for me to prove to them, that I can do it.
100%. Now I also hear in your free time that you sometimes like to partake in just the random bike ride.
Yeah, where'd you hear that from?
I do my research.
Yeah, so when I have a lot of friends back home who are, like, really into biking. So I've always, since I was young, just loved to go on bike rides and get out. When I was in Kansas City, I got a bike off of Amazon and had to put it together. And since then, it's been with me. I think it's in our living room right now. But yeah, I love to go on bike rides. I have, when I put it together, it was a fixed gear. And I realized quick that I should not be riding a fixed gear because it can get a bit dangerous, especially playing. So I switched it to a single speed, so now I can just coast and chill. And yeah, I love getting out when the weather's good and just having a nice little bike ride.
That's what I heard. You like to just get out. I like that. Yeah. So I assume obviously negative. You're not training so much because of the COVID, but more time to get out.
Madison is a great place to get on the bike and go. It's very bike friendly, and it's got some beautiful lakes to go around, and some good places to kind of get involved in.
Any thoughts of adding pegs to it so you can wheel one of your teammates around?
I'm hoping when the right time is, maybe I can get a tandem.
That'd be pretty incredible.
Maybe I can get a tandem bike. Maybe when the apartment's a little bigger. No, I'm just kidding. Maybe I don't know. We got some pretty big guys on our team, so I don't know if I could fit them on pegs. I might fly backwards.
What about tandem and peg? I think I've never seen that, because I've seen pegs, I've seen tandem. I've never seen it together.
We'd save a lot of gas going to training with 4 guys on a tandem bike with pegs. That'd be good. That'd be really good.
Yeah, that's efficient. That's
no. I've been meaning. I wanted to actually, sometimes ride my bike to training, but now with the COVID stuff, they take our temperature before every training session, and it's the infrared, like on the forehead. So we've had some issues just with making sure guys are not out in the sun before they do it.
Sure.
Obviously, so I thought, well, there goes my idea of biking.
And I feel like it's such a Wisconsin thing, because that was like what Brett Favre was known for, right? Biking to the stadium.
When the weather's good, it's a nice little warm-up, get the legs loose. I love it.
I like it, man. All right, so switching gears a little bit. See how I brought the bike pun into it?
Yeah. That's a good one.
You've had a lot of different experiences. Unique experiences in playing for your dad and playing for one of the, best academy teams and going overseas to multiple different countries, as well as, taking a step back almost from professional down to PDL, and then finding a new team and getting loaned out. So you've had a lot of different experiences in your time, in your career. What would be the biggest advice you would give yourself at 15 years old? You're that sophomore about to go to Chicago for the first time. What would be that biggest advice you would give yourself?
Kind of a few things. The first thing, and I say this, I think, to anyone who asks, and I still try to implement it with anywhere I go, is always like kind of be a sponge. There's always guys that have either done it or have been a part of it, or are doing it, and learning from them, and not thinking that when you don't, and even when you do know, still being a sponge to get that information and to better. I would also say, I would tell myself, trust your craft, but never stop working on it, and never stop adding to your arsenal of, whatever it may be that makes you the player you are. Because the moment that you let your foot off the gas, then someone who has been kind of sharpening their tools, getting ready for that will kind of, take you over. And that might be in your position. That might be the one spot at a club, where now you're out of contract, this and that. I would say trust your craft, but never stop working on it, and never stop kind of, focusing that it's on you to do that.
Yeah, which I think, coming from you and what you've talked about, just about your individual kind of development, or, your growth you've learned through the game, is part of that. And that all-encompassing, as we talked about before, kind of like leaving the ego at the door.
Yeah.
Like, you can learn from people. You're always have things to improve, like never resting on your laurels that like, oh, I did this, so now I can just coast from here.
No, 100%. And I think the same thing too is every club that brings a player in, they bring that player in for a reason. If that's because you can do this, you can hit a 50-yard diag, if that's because you just crunch players and tackles, if then you start to play and you're not doing that, then it's, in the eyes of the owners, in the eyes of the coach, even with your teammates, they're like, where is this guy? Where is that identity part? And so it's making sure that knowing why you're at a club, what makes you you, but then also the small things. It's like working on my right foot, or making sure that I can, sprint A to B, this and that. So it's like adding to it, but it's also knowing why you're there, but not, like you said, then resting on it or using that as like a crutch, because, someone's going to come right up to you and kick that crutch and you're going to fall, rather than you just standing up and saying, I've continued to do this. I'm even that much better at it now because I've still been working on it.
Yeah. So next question. And this one is, I'm interested to hear from you, because I think, you grow up with a dad who's a coach. Obviously, for some amount of time, like, you're going to play. At some point, that has to switch to your decision, not just because your dad's a coach and that's why you're playing. So what, like, now is your why for playing? What's like that deep reason that has that passion to keep going?
When I play, I think a lot of guys might say this, but when I play, it's like everything that I'm going through, dealing with, like, disappears. It's like I only focus on playing. And it's even when I'm playing sometimes, like obviously you're focused, but it's like I'm in like a little different world. It's like the things that may have been keeping me up at night, or the things that I'm thinking about while on my bike ride or whatever. Those things, honestly, they tend to disappear, and I'm out there with guys that I love, with fans, with the community, and it's just like it feels like that's the only thing in that moment that I'm doing and that I want to do, and that's 100% the reason why.
Yeah,
I just get lost in it, and that's the thing is sometimes when I think this whole COVID thing has happened, is like we're doing things kind of inside, and it's how do you find that same level of getting lost in it? Like, can you get lost in it, hitting it against a board in your backyard, or juggling in a basement, or you know what I'm saying? And you can, but it's not the same, obviously. So trying to keep your mind, saying, okay, this is why I do it, remembering that, when you're on the field, when you're training, that is, how it makes you feel, is definitely something that I look forward to every time stepping on the field.
Absolutely. No, when I was playing, that's exactly how I felt. It was just like an escape from everything else going on in my life. And it was just like a hour and a half to just play soccer and no other things.
No, 100%. 100%.
So, biggest takeaway I have from your from interviewing you is don't coast unless you're on a bike.
Yeah, I like that. Don't coast unless you're on a bike. I might have to start using that. That's a good one. That's a really good one.
I'll let you steal that.
Yeah, I might have to. Steal that.
All right, man. I appreciate you taking time to share your story.
Oh no, definitely.
I think it's a unique story, and I think it's very I don't know if cool is the right word. I'll say cool to just see your development and growth through the different experiences, right? Because at the end of the day, football, soccer, whether you play for the next 10 years or not, you're being a human is long. And so to grow and learn from those experiences, to take those forward, I think is awesome to see as well. So I appreciate you taking the time to share everything.
I appreciate you having me on, and having you doing this with a lot of other soccer players, male, female, professional. It's really cool to hear their stories and have an outlet like that.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
Yeah, have a good one, man.
All right, you too. Bye.
See ya.